Hey guys, welcome to week 4 of the internship. Today we're going to be talking about how do you plan and pull off events for kids. And really we're just going to be talking about event planning. And it really doesn't matter what ministry you end up in, whether it's kid life or whether it's adult ministry, events just play a huge part. Now we don't count on events to pull things off. We count on people and people connecting with people to really deliver the gospel, to see lives changed. But events play a huge role in moving that process along. And so we want to help to equip you to be great event planners, to make sure that they happen well, and also that the people aspect is there. And you'll see, because I've already recorded the second message, how important people are. Now here's the deal. I'm up at the church. I have 16 minutes until the prayer and worship night starts. And so we're just going to do a real quick run through, kind of a little mini word study of the word plan in the Bible. I want you to see just how this idea of planning, especially in Proverbs, how important, because Proverbs is basically the wisdom of a father passed down to his son about how to live a successful life. And so you'll see that as you dig into Proverbs, you'll see a lot of topics, but planning is in there tons. And wisdom is there if we'll receive it. And so I just want to give you a few ideas about planning from the book of Proverbs. But first, my favorite talk that I've ever given on planning was called Poop or Treasure. Poop or Treasure. And it kind of started like this: not managing your time well, because that's what I was talking about time management. But when we talk about planning events, it's comparable, because a lot of the same principles that I'm going to give you here about planning were the same principles that I gave about time management. And so I talked about how not planning an event, but just letting an event happen. It's a lot like checking a dirty diaper. Now, there's all kinds of ways to check a dirty diaper. You know, there's the lift and smell. These are the new parents. They'll pick it up and kind of smell. There's the peek method, where you kind of look through and you try to see if there's any poopy in there. And then I was shocked to discover this. I've never personally used this method, but there is actually the dipstick method, where you actually take your finger and stick it down in there and see what you find. Now, I would never choose the dipstick method because I'm not sure what I'm going to find down there, but literally the best thing that I can find whenever I use the dipstick method is nothing. But chances are I'm going to find more than nothing. I'm going to find poop. And I don't want to find poop with my finger. But here's the deal about not planning. Here's the deal about not managing your time. Chances are you're going to find poop. If you don't plan an event well, chances are you're going to find poop. Proverbs 21:5 says this. It says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty." Now let's talk about that last half of the verse. Remember, we learned this. This is, again, Hebrew poetry is meant to inform. And so this is an opposite couplet. So on the backside it says, haste leads to poverty. Now haste is doing things, but haste is doing things without thinking about them. Haste is doing things without a plan. And the Bible's clear. Haste leads to poverty. Again, if you don't plan, the best you can find is nothing, and chances are you're going to find a whole lot of poop. Okay, so that's the second half of the verse. The other half of the verse has two parts. The plans of the diligent. Okay, so what we mean by that is plans. Yes, we want to think, we want to plan, but we also then want to work our plan. We want to be diligent in pulling it off. And if we'll have those two pieces, the plans of the diligent, they lead to profit. They lead to success. They lead to good things. And so we want to plan well, and then we want to work our plan well. Again, but here's something else that the Bible says about plans. Proverbs 15:22 says this: "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." So when we go into planning, and we're going to talk about this practically whenever we get to the second half of our time together, we want to involve more people, because plans fail for lack of counselors. We want lots of counselors giving us input so that we can make the best decision and have the best plans that we can. Again, lots of counselors. We want the right people on the bus. We'll talk a lot about that next. But then also we want to count the cost. Recently I was having a meeting with Harry, who's my direct report, Harry Bates at the GLR campus. And I'd begun to get stressed. I'd begun to feel overworked. And whenever that happens, whenever something negative comes into my life, especially in my emotions, in my heart, in my head, I want to track it back to the source. What's the core lie that I'm believing? Just like we did in Debunked, right? Well, so again, I was feeling stressed. I was working too much. And so what was it? What was the lie that was really causing this? And so I kept tracking it back. Okay, so I'm working too much. Okay, why am I working too much? Well, because we're trying to do too many things. Okay, great. Well, we're trying to do too many things. Okay, why are we trying to do too many things? Well, it's because every time I get a good idea, I think it has to happen. Every time I get a good idea, I'm like, we have to do that. That is going to be awesome. We have to do that. And all of a sudden, because of that one lie, we have to do it. If I have a good idea, I have to pull it off. All of a sudden, I was doing too many things. And so that's another thing about planning is you have to count the cost. When you accept the role, when you choose to plan an event, when you choose to make something happen, you had better count the cost. So Jesus is telling a parable in Luke 14, 28 through 30. But as much as it's a spiritual principle about seeking after him and chasing after him, it's also just true in real life. Listen to it. He says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Wouldn't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, ha ha, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. They're going to make fun of you because you didn't count the cost. So when it comes to planning, one of the key parts of planning is to count the cost, to make sure that you've got enough energy, enough people, enough resources, enough emotional margin. Because again, enough spiritual margin. We want to make sure that we've got enough in our capacity to pull this off with excellence. So again, we want to count the cost. That's a principle of planning. So again, we want to make sure that we plan and then we work our plan. We want to make sure that we have the right people on the bus. We want to make sure that we have the right counselors involved because that helps us to succeed. And we want to count the cost to make sure that we've got enough to pull off a plan with excellence. Something else I'll tell you about. We were supposed to do a day camp 3 weeks after VBS. 5 weeks from when it was supposed to happen, I was sitting down with some core people and we were talking through it. And this lady, man, who I respect so much, the great family, Christy Price, she looks at me and she says, hey, Kevin, I've been thinking, that's 5 weeks out. How many people, have we communicated this? She starts saying, I don't know if we really should do a day camp. And all of a sudden, I counted the cost. I looked at the time. I looked at what we already had in place, where we were supposed to go in. And all of a sudden, I said, Christine, you're right. We can't do this with excellence. We can't pull this off this year. And so I went to the people that I'd already told that we were going to do it. I said, hey, we're not going to do it. And everybody I talked to was like, oh, okay. For me, it was this huge choice to not do something. But for her, for everybody else, it was like, okay, that's fine. We see the reasons why. But we're probably going to do it next year. We're going to do it with excellence. We're going to start further out, making sure that we got it. But again, we want to make sure that we've got enough resources to do it with excellence. Now, here's another one. This is kind of God's role in planning. We have our role, man, and we're going to talk a lot about our role. But listen, here's God's role. Proverbs 16:1. To humans, again, the new NIV decides they need to use human. To humans belong the plan of the heart. Man, that just sounds weird to me. To man belongs the plans of the heart. So to us, we're to plan, we're to think through, we're to scheme, to strategize. The plans of the heart, that's for us. We are called to plan because it says it right there. To man, to humans belong the plans of the heart. But listen, but from the Lord comes the reply of the tongue. So that means the success of these plans, that rests firmly in the Lord's hands. So we're going to run after it. We're going to pursue it. We're going to chase after it. At the end, the result belongs to God. We plan, He prospers. Okay, just like we communicate, He illuminates. We plan, the results are in His hands. So listen to this. Proverbs 16:3 and 4. We skipped a verse, catching it on the next side. It says, commit to the Lord whatever you do. So again, that means what we're planning, we're going to release it to God. We're going to release it to God. Commit to God whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. He will direct them. He will guide them. He will put them into being. He will establish your plans. Now listen to this truth. This truth is just true, okay? It says the Lord works out everything to its proper end. The Lord works it out for his own ends. The Lord is in control. He reigns. Our God reigns. He is in control. Okay, so again, let's just review these quick scriptural principles. Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. Plans plus working hard equals profit. Okay? That's a spiritual principle. It's a wisdom principle. It's true whether I do it or whether the heathen in India does it. It's just true. Plans plus hard work leads to profit. Proverbs 15:22. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. So we want to have the right people on the bus because the right counselors bring success. The parable from Luke 14, count the cost. Make sure you have the resources necessary to pull off an event with excellence before you begin it. Plan well so that you know if you can pull it off. And then Proverbs 16:1, 3, and 4, and release it. The plans belong to us, but the results belong to God. So again, man, these are the scriptural principles about planning. And I didn't have a lot of time to dig deeply into them with you. But man, just go back over those, read on them, meditate on them like we've talked about in the past, chewing on each word. And as you do it, it's just going to release to you how important planning is. But in the end, how much once we plan, it's still not ours. When we plan it, the results still belong to God. And so embrace that. Know that we're going to plan and we're going to do it with excellence. But God ultimately carries the weight